Hey, shalom and welcome. My name is Dr. Trevor Dennis, and this is the Israelite Language Lab. We are now going to be doing lesson number 9. Okay, so we've got a new time slot. We're going to be meeting every week at 9 p.m. I believe it is Eastern Standard Time. So I look forward to each and every one of us being together on this slot. If you have any questions, you can write to me at HebrewApostolic@gmail.com. So let us begin with a prayer. Father, in the name of Yahweh, we just pray that you, O Yahweh, will ingratiate us to you, that you will touch our hearts, that we might learn our language and have faith in our language, that, Father, we will pursue it relentlessly, and that which is in our DNA will be unlocked, the potential to learn Ibare according to your spirit as you lead us by your Rawak. Grant us that grace to learn. In Yahweh's name we pray. Amen, amen, amen. So let us now proceed to practice our Alap-bat. Are you ready? Abagada wazakataya kalamana saipatazakwarashatha. You shouldn't need us to show it to you anymore, but just in case, we're going to play it for you. Are you ready? Here we go.
Ancient Hebrew alphabet song sing-along for your Howard children in the tune of Row, Row, Row Your Boat. Remember, kids, we read from right to left, starting with the first row. Abagada wazakataya kalamana saipatazakwarashatha. Let's try it again. Abagada wazakataya kalamana saipatazakwarashatha. One more time. Abagada wazakataya kalamana saipatazakwarashatha. Tawada for
Thawada. Thank you. So we have learned the Alap-bat, and that is the foundation, because our lessons in Ibare are in fact phonetic. So you read phonetically. By now, by this time, you should be able to break down the writings phonetically. Anything I show you, you should be able to read it phonetically. Now, for the next couple of weeks, we're going to deal with the history so that you get the faith inside of you to believe Yahweh and in the language. So I'm going to show you some stuff and you're going to get it. I promise you. The first thing you need to understand is that so-called Hebrew, as you know it today, is not Hebrew at all, but is in fact Israeli. Here we go.
Shalom, my name is Mia, and I'm a Hebrew e-tutor with Living Language. Hebrew was revived at the end of the 19th century from a sacred language reserved for text and religious study to a modern language that would be used in daily life in Israel. This revival took place in both Europe and Palestine. First, in Europe, writers created the language by adapting the grammar and vocabulary of Biblical Hebrew. Biblical Hebrew lacked many modern terms and concepts such as science and philosophy, but writers such as Mendele Mocher Sfarim, Echad Ha'am, and Chaim Nachman Bialik would eventually expand the language to be adaptable to literature and to the modern world. The language was brought to Palestine by Eliezer ben Yehuda, who was raised and educated in Europe and immigrated to Palestine in 1881. He set out to create a language that would replace Yiddish, Ladino, and other regional diaspora dialects and serve as a working language for Jews who immigrated to Palestine from all over the world. The goal was to create a language that would serve not only as the language of prayer and holy study, but also could be written in newspapers, books, and spoken on the street. In 1890, Ben Yehuda founded the Hebrew Language Council to help resolve challenges of the new language, such as grammar, punctuation, spelling, and terminology. By adding and inventing new words, he turned out a dictionary of 16 volumes and also published the very first Hebrew language newspaper. This revitalization project was ultimately so successful that currently there are 9 million speakers of Hebrew on the globe. This unique history is just one of the many reasons that Hebrew is a fascinating language to learn.
So I want to make it clear that what they speak is Israeli and not Hebrew. True Hebrew is different from what you hear or know as Hebrew today. In fact, true Hebrew is the language of the Shamayim, or the language of heaven. So let's get to it, shall we? The language of heaven. Paleo-Hebrew, as is the language of heaven, Ibare, is historically recognized as the first pictographic language. In other words, it was first pictographic, and then it became, or you could even say hieroglyphic, and then it became characters. It is the first written language that we have in the earth realm today. After around about 405 BC, we find it becoming what we call Aramaic. Aramaic, 450 BC, Aramaic or Syriac block script. So you had gone from being pictographic, more or less before 2000 BC, around about 1500 BC, it becomes what we know as Paleo-Hebrew or Middle Hebrew. And then around about 500 BC, you get Aramaic Syriac block script. Now, Aramaic Syriac block script is the script that you see now written by the Israelis, and that Aramaic Syriac block script was developed in Babylon. It was developed in Babylon, but it had the same alphabet. Why? Because everybody copied the Alap-bat of the Hebrews. So it doesn't matter whether it's that or whether it's Greek or whether it's Latin or whether it's English. They all learn to read and write from us. Okay. Paleo-Hebrew is evidenced by certain stelas or artifacts left behind, one of which is the Moabite stone and the Lachish stela, and so on and so on. There are loads of them that you can actually find, and maybe in the next lesson I will do that. I will show you the stelas and show you some of the language that is written on them, so that you might see that we are not dealing with a made-up language. You heard the woman say very, very clearly that Eliezer ben Yehuda in the early 19th century, he revived Hebrew, he invented words and brought it to the promised land. In other words, he made up the language. He made it up from Ladino, from Biblical Hebrew, and from their key Ashkenazi language. So he spoke those three things and brought them together and made it up. We are not making up anything. We are restoring the true language of the Bible. And this is the documented language of the book of heaven and the mother of all languages. Notice what the scripture says in Matthew 6 and verse 10. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven, or in the Shamayim. We're going to begin to show you now that this is the language of heaven. I'm going to keep to a limited amount of time, but I want you to know for sure that this is the right thing. Joshua 1 verse 2. And Yahweh being his correct Paleo-Hebrew name, formed a man from the ground, and he blew into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul endowed with speech. So what would he have spoken? He would have spoken the same language as Yahweh, because we found him in the garden speaking with Yahweh. Therefore, he would have spoken whatever language Yahweh spoke, and Yahweh would speak the language of the Shamayim. Jubilees 3 verse 28. And on that day was closed the mouth of all beasts, and of cattle, and of birds, and of whatever walks, and of whatever moves, so that they could not no longer speak, for they all spoken one with another, with one lip and with one tongue. What would that have been? The language of the Shamayim. We find later on that when Joseph is supposed dead, that Jacob goes out, or his sons go out rather, and they capture a wolf. And Jacob has a conversation with the wolf. Why? Because he could speak their language. Okay. Joshua 2 verse 13. And in those days, Cainan wrote upon tablets of stone what was to take place in time to come, and he put them in his or among his treasures. So Cainan, which is one of the early fathers, wrote on tables of stone. He wrote. Okay. Jubilees 12 verse 26. And I opened his mouth and his ears and his lips, and I began to speak with him in Hebrew, in the tongue of creation. So what is the language of creation? The language of creation is Ibare, Hebrew. Okay. Joshua 7 verse 46. And all the earth was of one tongue and words of union. But Nimrod did not go the way of Yahweh, and he was more wicked than all the men that were before him from the days of the flood until those days. So up until the days of Nimrod, all the earth spoke with one language and had words that were united. Joshua 9 verse 20. And King Nimrod reigned securely, and all of the earth was under his control, and all the earth was of one tongue and words of union. Same thing. They spoke one language. What language? Ibare. So what? Now we know that the language spoken by heaven, or from the beginning, was Ibare, the one language. Let's go a little deeper into the language spoken by heaven, because this will have to be written down as well as spoken. Okay. Enoch 69 verse 8 to 9. Notice the highlighted words. We first have Pinami, the one demonstrated to the children of people. This is an angel or a malachim. Furthermore, he caused the people to penetrate the secret of writing and to the use of ink and paper. On account of this matter, there are many who have erred from eternity to eternity until this very day. So apparently, the secret of writing and reading, etc., was released by one of the Malachims, and it was not time, or it was not yet to be. And as a result of that, we, the people of earth, went into error until this very day. Enoch 103 verse 1 to 2. I now swear to you, righteous ones, by the splendor of Yahweh, the great one, and by the splendor of his kingdom, and I swear to you even by the Almighty One, for I know this mystery. What mystery? Well, how did he know the mystery? I have read the tablets of heaven and have seen the Quadash writings. What are they? The separated writings. And have understood the writing in them, and they are inscribed concerning you. So we, the righteous ones, that is Yasharal's line, have been able to read from time immemorial and to write. We were the first to read and to write. The nations did not know reading and writing until they encountered Yasharal, and then they picked up writing. Notice that even so-called Arabic is descendant from Hebrew, because Ishmael was indeed the brother of Isaac. And as a result of that, he went away with a form of Hebrew and developed that. Okay. The same is true of Esau. Esau learned at some point in time as a people to read and write, but as we know, the language they developed, Greek, was a copycat of Hebrew or Ibaré. Moving on. Jubilees 30, verse 23. And on the day when the sons of Jacob slew Shechem, a writing was recorded in their favor in heaven. I jumped. It was written for a blessing. So how could Isaac, Jacob, etc., and his sons write if they didn't have a written language? What would they have written? Hebrew. Enoch 93:2. And Enoch said concerning the children of righteousness, concerning the elect ones of the world, that's us, and concerning the plant of truth, I will speak these things, my children. Verily, I, Enoch, myself, and let you know about it according to that which was revealed to me from the heavenly vision, that which I have learned from the words of the Quadash Malachim, or the separated Malachim or angel, and understood from the heavenly tablets. So Enoch read the heavenly tablets. Enoch 106:19. After that there shall occur still greater oppression than that which was fulfilled upon the earth the first time, or the time before the flood. For I do know the mysteries of the Quadash ones. For he, Yahweh, has revealed them to me and made me to know, and I have read them in the heavenly tablets, as in heaven, so in earth. Jubilees 3:10. And for this reason, the commandment is written on the heavenly tablets in regard to her that gives birth. So there are commandments that began to be written in heaven or in the Shamayim on the heavenly tablets before they were ever delivered to Masha or Moses. Let me not read all of this, but I will highlight only the portions that I have underlined, because otherwise this will turn into a mammoth task. However, you take down the scriptures. Jubilees 3:31. On this account, it is prescribed or written on the heavenly tablets, as touching all those who know the judgments of the Torah, that they should cover their shame and should not uncover themselves as or like the Gentiles. All right. What else is inscribed in the heavenly tablets? For this reason, it was ordained on the heavenly tablets, with the instrument with which a man kills his neighbor, with the same shall he be killed. Kill and be killed. Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. He that kills, murders, shall surely himself be murdered. After the manner that he wounded him, in like manner shall they deal with him. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Jubilees 5:13. And the judgment of all is ordained and written on the heavenly tablets in righteousness, that you're supposed to walk right. Judgment is written down for every creature and for every kind. There it is. Oh, my. Jubilees 6:17, 30, and 35. For this reason it is ordained and written on the heavenly tablets. And this was concerning the Feast of Weeks. All right. Then it goes on, verse 30. Thus it is engraved and ordained in the heavenly tablets. And also, all the days of the commandment will be 52 weeks of days, telling you that an entire year is always 52 weeks. That is engraved and ordained in the heavenly tablets. Verse 35, I skip, for the book is written before me, and on the heavenly tablets the division of days is ordained, lest they should forget the feasts of the covenant and walk according to the feasts of the Gentiles. This is what people are doing today, is they are walking according to the feasts of the Gentiles. Easter, Christmas, Valentine's, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Halloween, May Day, on and on, President's Day, Independence Day, Labor Day, on and on. Jubilees 1525. This Torah is for all the generations forever, that there is no circumcision of the days, and no omission of one day out of the 8 days, for it is an eternal ordinance ordained and written on the heavenly tablets. Jubilees 16:3, 9, 28 to 29. And we told her the name of her son, as his name is ordained and written in the heavenly tablets, that is, Yitzhak. And behold, it was commanded and engraved concerning his seed on the heavenly tablet, to remove them and root them out, and to execute judgment upon them like the judgment of Sodom, and to leave no seed of the man on earth on the day of condemnation. Speaking concerning Esau. And we blessed him forever, says another one, and all his seed, speaking of Isaac or Yitzhak, after him throughout all the generations of the earth, because he celebrated this festival in its season, according to the testimony of the heavenly tablets. 29. For this reason it is ordained on the heavenly tablets concerning Yasharal, that they shall celebrate the Feast of Tabernacle 7 days with joy in the 7th month, acceptable before Yahweh, a statute forever throughout their generations, every year. How many years? Every year. My. By now you're beginning to get the idea that a whole lot of things are ordained and written on the heavenly tablets. They were written so that we would read them. But we know from the book of Deuteronomy chapter 17 that we could also write our own copy, making sure that we keep it in our hearts and read it every day. Jubilees 18 verse 19. And accordingly has it been ordained and written on the heavenly tablets regarding Yasharal and its seed, that they should observe this festival 7 days with the joy of festival, speaking of the Feast of Tabernacles. Jubilees 19:9. And he said not a single word regarding the rumor in the land, how that Yahweh had said that he would give it to him and to his seed after him. And he begged a place there to bury his dead. This is Abraham. For he was found faithful and was recorded on the heavenly tablets as the friend of Yahweh. Jubilees 23, verse 32. And do you, Masha, write down these words? So, you mean Moses could write? Yes. What language would he have written in? Paleo-Hebrew. For thus are they written, and they record them on the heavenly tablets for a testimony for the generations to come. Well, how are the generations to come going to know what was written if they cannot read their language? This has been the advantage that both the heathen, that all of them, all of the nations, and the Israelis have purported themselves to have over true Israel. No more. Now we understand. Now we know, and now we can read the original language for ourselves. And the thing is, if you can read Paleo-Hebrew, you can read Israeli block script. You can read Aramaic, because they have the same alphabet. You just have to learn how to decode it. All right. Jubilees 24, verse 33. And thus it is written and engraved concerning him on the heavenly tablets, to do to him on the day of judgment, so that he may be rooted out of the earth. This is the judgment of Esau. Jubilees 28, verse 6. And Laban said to Jacob, it is not so done in our country to give the younger before the elder, and it is not right to do this, for thus it is ordained and written in the heavenly tablets, that no one should give his younger daughter before the elder, but the elder one gives first, and after her the younger. And the man who does so, they set down guilt against him in heaven, and none is righteous that does this thing, for this deed is evil before Yahweh. This is one of our cultural practices, but you only learn this when you read the books that are called apocryphal, therefore meaning doubtful or spurious or hidden. Well, I'd like to choose the last one. They hid it so that we would not know, but we are recovering all. Hallelujah. Jubilees 30, verse 9, 19 to 20 and 22. For thus has it been ordained and written in the heavenly tablets regarding all the seed of Yasharal. He who defiles it shall surely die, and he shall be stoned with stones. And so they inscribed, oh, by the way, this is speaking of Shechem, that, he defiled Dinah. And therefore, Simeon and Levi killed him and the whole of their town, and it was regarded to them for righteousness, though their father was rather upset about what they did. Verse 19 to 20. And so they inscribed a testimony in his favor on the heavenly tablets, blessings and righteousness before the Almighty of all. And we remember the righteousness which the man fulfilled during his life. At all periods of the year until 1,000 generations, they will record it, and it will come to him and to his descendants after him. And he has been recorded on the heavenly tablets as a friend and a righteous man. This is Father Abraham or Abram. Verse 22. And if they transgress and work uncleanness in every way, they will be recorded on the heavenly tablets as adversaries, and they will be destroyed out of the book of life, and they will be recorded in the book of those who will be destroyed, and with those who will be rooted out of the earth. Now, you may not realize this, but this has a direct link into the Basora or New Testament, specifically Revelations. Here, Revelations 20, verse 12. And I saw the dead, small and great, stand before Allah. That's the Paleo-Hebrew word for God. And the books were open, and another book was open, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books, that is, the heavenly tablets, according to their works. My. And I tell you, you don't need to keep the commandments. Jubilees 31, verse 32. And he said, now I know that I have an eternal hope, and my sons also, before the Almighty of all. And thus it is ordained concerning the two, and they record it as an eternal testimony unto them on the heavenly tablets, how Yitzchak blessed them. This is Esau and Jacob, but Yitzchak is finding out what is going to befall his children in the last days. Jubilees 32, verse 10, 15, 21 to 22, and 28. Verse 10. And for this reason it is ordained on the heavenly tablets as a Torah, as a book, For the tithing again, the tithe to eat Yahweh from year to year in the place where it is chosen, that his name should dwell. And to this Torah there is no limit of days forever. So what's he saying? It's written in the Torah that tithing is written and ordained in the heavenly tablets, and that is forever in the place where he chose. Well, you are the temple of Yahweh, so you ought to tithe. It's written. Verse 15, and all the tithes of the ox and sheep shall be quadash unto Yahweh, and shall belong to his priests, which they will eat before him from year to year. For thus it is ordained and engraved recording regarding the tithe on the heavenly tablets. So is tithing. Well, we can't go back to eating what we call the sheep and the goat at this point in time from year to year, because it's been given to the priesthood to eat from it. But rather we know now that you're given in exchange for your labor, you're given money. Money is that which you're given in exchange for your labor or your time, and that is what you bless the ministry with so that they can live. Verse 21, and he saw in a vision of the night, and behold, a malach, that's an angel, descended from heaven with 7 tablets in his hands. And he gave them to Jacob, and he read them and knew all that was written therein, which would befall him and his sons throughout the ages. Now, Jacob read them and knew them. Do you think when he was commanding his children what kind of behaviors they should display and how they should conduct themselves, that he was being guided by the information on the heavenly tablets? Absolutely. And so later that would become the commandments that HaMachiac himself would get. Verse 22, and he showed him all that was written on the tablets, and said to him, do not build this place, and do not make it an eternal sanctuary, and do not dwell here, for this is not the place. Go to the house of Abraham, your father, and dwell with Yitzhak, your father, until the day of the death of your father. So Jacob went and lived with Abraham, who spoke the language of the Shamayim and wrote the language of the Shamayim and read the language of the Shamayim. What do you think is going to happen to Yitzhak? He's going to learn it too. And later on, Jacob is going to learn it too, because Abraham was still around when Jacob was growing up and became a man. See, they don't teach you that in cemetery. Oh, I mean seminary. Oh, yes. Verse 28. And thus it was manifested that it should be, and it is written on the heavenly tablets. Therefore it was revealed to him that he should celebrate it and add it to the 7 days of the feast. That is one of the holy days. He added it to the 7 days of the feast. Jubilees, I believe that's probably the 8th day. Jubilees 33, verse 10. For this reason, it is written and ordained on the heavenly tablets. How many times are you going to see that? You can't doubt it anymore. That a man should not lie with his father's wife, and should not uncover his father's skirt or nakedness, for this is unclean. They shall surely die together. The man who lies with his father's wife, and the woman also, for they have wrought uncleanness on the earth. See, when you see uncover his father's skirt, it means his father's nakedness, or sodomize him, have sex with your father. Jubilees 49:8. For it is an eternal ordinance engraved on the heavenly tablets regarding all the children of Yasharal, that they should observe it every year on its day, once a year, throughout all their generations, and there is no limit of days, for this is ordained forever. Now, we only have 2 one-day feasts. One is the Feast of Pentecost, and the other one is the time appointed of mourning, the Day of Atonement. I believe this is probably the day of Pentecost. Jubilees 50 verse 13. The man who does any of these things on the Shabbat shall die, so that the children of Yasharal shall observe the Shabbat according to the commandments regarding the Shabbats of the land, as it is written in the tablets. Where is it written? In the tablets. You ever found Sunday written in the tablets? The answer is no. The only day celebrated as a day of rest and worship is the Shabbat. There are different kinds of Shabbats, yep, but every one of them is given for the benefit of the people, for the benefit of the animals, and the benefit of the land, which he gave into my hands that I should write out for you the laws of the season. There it is again. My. And the seasons according to the division of their days. Herewith is completed the account of the division of days. All right. We are now at the point where we're going to look at the language that everybody used to speak a little closer. So as we look at this part now, I want you to understand that this is what we should all be speaking. But because of what has occurred, we no longer speak it today. But should we? The answer is yes. By the way, like, subscribe, share, click the bell if this is your first time with us. If you are on YouTube, you're on the Hebrew Apostolic. If you are on Facebook, I'm usually Dr. Trevor U. Dennis, and you can follow me. You can also share this lesson with those who are out there and would like to learn more. So share this lesson far and wide amongst your friends so that they will be able to get it. Now, I would also like to say, if you have any questions, write to me, HebrewApostolic@gmail.com. If you'd like to give, look down there and you'll see on the ribbon how to support using Cash App or PayPal. Please do give according as Yahweh has blessed you. Let me get back to dealing with this again. Hallelujah. Let's get back to this. I need to just share this with you again. All right. The language all used to speak is, as I said, Ibare. Jubilees 8, verse 1 to 3 and verse 11 to 12. It mentions that Arphaxad had a child called Cainan. And verse 2, the son grew and his father taught him writing. This is way back. They were being taught the language of the Shamayim. And he went to seek for himself a place where he might seize for himself a city. And he found a writing which former generations had carved in the rock. When was that? Before the flood. So this is after the flood he found this. But before the flood, a former generation had written it into a rock. And what did he do? He transcribed it, which means he knew how to write. And sinned owning to it, or because of it, for it contained the teachings of the watchers, in accordance with which they used to observe the omens of the sun and moon and stars in all the signs of heaven. 11. And he called his sons, and they drew nigh to him, they and their children, and he divided the earth into lots. This is Noah, which his 3 sons were to take in possession. And they reached forth their hands and took the writings which he had out of the bosom of Noah, their father. Verse 11. And there came forth on the writing as Shem's lot, the middle of the earth. So what, by the way, if the earth is round, what's the middle, as in not round, but globular? What is the middle of the earth? But if it's flat and round, now you can pinpoint the middle section of the earth. And then you can say there is a northern section and a southern section. So the middle section of the earth is, according to the Bible, the inheritance of the Shemites. And a portion of that from the river Euphrates to the river Nile belongs specifically to the children of Yasharal. there came forth a writing as Shem's lot, the middle of the earth, which we should take as an inheritance for himself and for his sons for the generations of eternity. This is actually the reason why Canaan became cursed, because he entered into the lot of Shem, and they had made a covenant that anyone who took another man's lot would be cursed by heaven. And this is written on the tables of heaven. So I'm going to take this, the language spoken and passed on by our forefathers. So what is that language? Jubilees 4, verse 16 to 17. And in the 11th Jubilee, 11 times 50 years, Jared took to himself a wife, and her name was Barakah, or blessing, the daughter of Rashujal, a daughter of his father's brother, in the 4th week of this Jubilee. And she bare him a son in the 5th week, or the 35th year, 35th year, yeah, in the 4th year of the Jubilee, of that Jubilee. And he called his name Enoch. So now we're going to find out who got it first, who got the understanding first. It's easy. Before the flood, it was Enoch. Verse 17. And he was the first among men that are born on earth who learned writing and knowledge and wisdom, and who wrote down the signs of heaven according to the order of their months in a book. You can read about that in the book of Enoch, that men might know the seasons of the years according to the order of their separate months. Father wanted us to understand these things and to understand where the feast days fell in those months and years, but we had not gotten to that place yet. All right. Jubilees 6, verse 11 to 12, and then 29. On this account he spoke to you, that you should make a covenant with the children of Israel. A covenant with who? The children of Israel. In this month, upon the mountain, with an oath. This is speaking now of the day of Pentecost. A covenant on that mountain on that day, in that month. And that you should sprinkle blood upon them because of all the words of the covenant which Yahweh made with them forever. How long did he make the covenant with the children of Israel? Forever. There ain't no church in there. Verse 12. And this testimony or covenant is written concerning you, that you should observe it continually, so that you should not eat on any day any blood of beasts or birds or cattle during all the days of the earth, and that the man who eats the blood of beasts or of cattle or of birds during all the days of the earth, he and his seed shall be rooted out of the land or wiped out. You know who loves to eat blood in their meat? Loves it rare, loves it half rare. Hey, you can tell an Israelite by just that one thing. We want our food well cooked. Hey, boy, we want it cooked. Hey, no blood, no blood. Verse 29, and that's even before we knew who we were. Verse 29, and they placed them on the heavenly tablets. Each had 13 weeks from one to another past their memorial, from the first to the second, and the second to the third, and from the third to the fourth, 13 weeks being between. This is another way you can work out the feast days, once you can find the first one. And you need to know how to do that. I can do that. You can learn. Jubilees 10, verse 13. And Noah wrote down all things in a book. Where did he write it? In a book. They took it out of his chest, remember? As we instructed him concerning every kind of medicine. So in his book was medicinal, healing or herbs. Thus, the evil spirits were precluded from hurting the sons of Noah. Jubilees 11:16. And the child began to understand the errors of the earth, speaking of Abram, that all went astray after graven images and after uncleanness. And his father, Terah, taught him writing, and he was 2 weeks of years. He was 14. And he separated himself from his father that he might not worship idols with him. Young man had sense. Joshua 9, verse 5 to 6. And when Abraham came out from the cave, he went to Noah and his son Shem, and he remained with them to learn the instruction of Yahweh and his ways. And no man knew where Abraham was. And Abraham served Noah and Shem his son for a long time. Verse 6. And Abraham was in Noah's house 39 years, from the time of 14 and 39 years on. And Abraham knew Yahweh from 3 years old, and he went in the ways of Yahweh until the day of his death, as Noah and his son Shem had taught him. So how did he learn to read and write? From Noah and Shem. What did he learn? He learned the language of his forefathers. What's that? The same one Noah brought through the flood. What was that? Ibaré. And all the sons of the earth in those days grossly transgressed against Yahweh, and they rebelled against him, and they served other powers, and they forgot Yahweh, forgot his language too. He who had created them in the earth, and the inhabitants of the earth made unto themselves at that time every man his powers of wood and stone, which would neither speak nor deliver, hear nor deliver, and the sons of men served them, and they became their powers. Jubilees 12:25 to 26. And Yahweh Almighty said, open his mouth and his ears, that he may hear and speak with his mouth, with the language which has been revealed. Oh my. Well, if it was revealed to Abraham and passed down in the bloodline, it's in your blood, even though you may not know it, and it has to be revealed. For it had ceased from the mouth of all the children of men from the day of the overthrow of Babel. And he opened his mouth and his ears and his lips, and I began to speak with him in Hebrew, in the tongue of the creation. And he took the books of his fathers, and these were written in Hebrew. What were they written in? Hebrew. What form of Hebrew? Paleo-Hebrew. And he transcribed them. And he began from henceforth to study them. And I made known to him that which he could not understand. And he studied them during the 6 rainy months. Joshua 26:16 to 17, 27 to 28. And Isaac, the son of Abraham, was 60 years old when he begat them. That's his 2 boys. And the boys grew up to their 15th year, and they came among the society of men. Esau was a designing and deceitful man, and an expert hunter in the field, still is. And Jacob was a man perfect and wise, dwelling in tents, feeding flocks, and learning the instruction of Yahweh. What would he have learned them in? The language of his forefathers, Ibaré, and the commands of his father and mother. Verse 27. And teach your children and your seed the instructions of Yahweh and his commandments. Oh, you don't need the commandments anymore? Well, why does he say, if you love me, keep my commandments? Well, why does he say that? Okay. And his commandments, and teach them the upright way in which they should go, in order that it may be well with them forever. Well, if you don't keep the commandments forever, which Deuteronomy 5:29 tells you, then how will you it be well with you and your seed forever. Verse 28. And Isaac answered his father and said unto him, that which my Adonai, Lord, has commanded, that will I do, and I will not depart from the commands of Yahweh, my Elohah. I will keep all that he commanded me. And Abraham blessed his son Isaac, and also his children. And Abraham taught Jacob the instruction of Yahweh and all his ways. Who taught Jacob? Abraham. Jubilees 39:6. But he did not surrender his soul, and he remembered Yahweh and the words which Jacob his father used to read amongst the words of Abraham. This is Joseph now. That no man should commit fornication with a woman who has a husband, that for him the punishment of death has been ordained in the heaven before the Most High Yahweh, and the sin will be recorded against him in the eternal books continually before Yahweh. My. That's why Joseph didn't commit adultery or fornication in his case, but it was adultery, because he understood what was in the commandments of his forefathers. Do you understand what is in the heavenly tablets? Joshua 49, verse 9 to 10. And all the officers answered the king and said, but surely it is written in the laws of Egypt, so even the Egyptians had laws, and that it should not be violated, that a man shall reign over Egypt, nor be the second to the king, but one who has knowledge in all the languages of the Son of Men. In other words, they set up a divine sign. But Joseph only knew one language when he went down into Egypt, though he would have learned the language of Mitzrayim when he was down there in Mitzrayim. But in one night, Father sent an angel to teach him all the languages of men, the 70 root languages of men, so that he would be able to be the Savior that Yahweh would send. Verse 10. Now therefore our Lord and King, behold, this Hebrew man can only speak the Hebrew language. And how then can he be over us, the second on the government, as a man who not even knows our language? That wasn't true, of course. He did know their language. It's just that he was a foreigner. Joshua 53:8. And Yasap read the letter and knew his father's writing. That means that he knew his father's writing, saying that his father wrote, and he could read. And he read his father's writing and recognized his father's handwriting. And he wished to weep. And he went into an inner room, and he wept greatly weeping, and he went out. He wept a great weeping, then he went out. Joshua 54:34. And Yasap heard all these words that his brethren spoke before him. And they did not know that Yasap understood them, for they imagined that he knew not to speak Hebrew, because it was their own clan language. Nobody else spoke it but them. They spoke enough in other languages to communicate with them. They obviously could communicate in Mitzrayim. They could communicate in Canaan, but they didn't think that the Egyptians could understand their clan language. Jubilees 43:15. And he conversed with them in the Hebrew tongue and fell on their neck and wept. This is Yasap. Jubilees 45:16. And he gave all his books and the books of his father to Levi. This is Jacob, his son, that he might preserve them and renew them for his children until this day. Now, every time they were going to get worn out, get a new copy. Keep copying them and making sure they were right. All right? Which is what we were supposed to do. Keep our own copies of the law. Oh, my. He gave them the books. Who did he give the books to? Levi. Who the Levites? What was their job? To teach the rest of Israel, to preserve the truth. That is the job of a Levite, to preserve truth and to teach it in Israel. Jubilees 47, verse 9. And afterward, when you were grown up, they brought you into the daughter of Pharaoh, and you didst become her son. And Amram, your father, taught you writing. Who was Amram? Amram was a Levite, the father of HaMachiac, and he taught him the language and the writing of the Israelites. After that, you had completed 3 weeks, 21 years old. They brought you into the royal court. He stayed there until he was 40. Joshua 82, verse 10 to 11 and 24 to 25. And Yahweh wrote the 10 commandments. What language do you think he wrote them in? Well, HaMachiac would have to understand them, and the children of Israel would have to understand them, so it had to have been in Hebrew, which he had commanded the children of Yasharal upon 2 tables of stone, which he gave to HaMachiac to command the children of Israel. Verse 11. And at the end of the 40 days and 40 nights, when Yahweh had finished speaking to HaMachiac on Mount Sinai, then Yahweh gave to HaMachiac the tablets of stone written with the finger of Yahweh. What language did Yahweh write? Hebrew, Ibaré. Then spake Yahweh to HaMachiac to hew 2 stone tablets, and to bring them up to Yahweh. This is after he destroyed the first 2, who would write upon them the 10 commandments. Now, HaMachiac did so, and he came down and hewed the 2 tables and went up the Mount Sinai to Yahweh, and Yahweh wrote the 10 commandments upon the tablets. I think this is probably where I need to be thinking about stopping today. I want you to understand, first and foremost, that our language is the language of the Shamayim, that the one spoken and written by the Israelis is Israeli. And I've got nothing against that. Israeli is Israeli. But the language is ours. The writings, that is, the ancient writings, are ours. And we must learn to recapture our language. We must learn to read Ibaré, to write Ibaré, and to speak Ibaré. It begins with reading. Once you can read, you will be able to write after a while, and then you'll be able to speak also, or read, speak, write. Writing being probably the most difficult of the skills. So I'm at a turning point now. I think I should stop and do a part 2 to this. So next week, Yah willing, I'll be able to do a part 2. Now let me just tell you what your homework should be. You should be using that app, which we've already spoken of in all of our lessons thus far, the Zadok app. You should be practicing pronunciation and reading, identifying the letters from the Zadok app. We also want to encourage you to purchase the Torah written in Paleo Hebrew. And there are websites that you can go to in order to read Paleo Hebrew. You want more information, why don't you write to me, HebrewApostolic@gmail.com. I want to encourage you to be with us. And of course, if you have any questions, write to me at this, HebrewApostolic@gmail.com. Also, you can pick us up on Twitter at Hebrew Apostolic. You can pick up our website, www.pillar.org.uk. You can give to our ministry using PayPal, using also a Cash App, and if you're in the UK, you can give through our website. If you're part of our ministry, we want to thank you. If you want to be a part of our ministry, why don't you write to me, HebrewApostolic@gmail.com, and engage me, and we'll talk about how you can be more involved in our ministry. Thank you very much for being with us today. May Yahweh barak you in the truth. We barak you also in truth. Amen.